Two SEC teams woke up on Saturday morning thinking that life was going to be different. One, hold off an upset against an ACC team. The other one, well, let's discuss it. Welcome on into the SEC postgame show presented to you by Prize Picks. Use promo code SECU when you sign up for a $50 instant play any single time with your very first bet. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, breaking down everything that we saw in the swamp as Miami actually looks to turn the corner underneath Cam Ward in year 3 of Mario Cristobal. Final score 41-17. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button down below. This is your number one source for all things SEC. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Follow him on Twitter, at Doc10 Sports. Follow me on Twitter, at Mr. Cole Thompson. And to keep up with the number one source for all things SEC, visit SECUnfiltered.com. Dave, they say never overreact to one game. You'll get them next time. There's always a brighter end look tomorrow. But if there was a way to start off a season for Billy Napier, that was the worst case scenario that you could possibly come up with. Final score 41-17 in the swamp. Miami rolls their way to 1-0 to begin the year.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about it as we were getting on the show and texting during the game. If you wrote a script and you said this is the worst case scenario for Florida against Miami and specifically for Billy Napier, that was it. Man, that was it. You never led. You were really never really – well, I shouldn't say you weren't in the game. I mean, you had the Montrell Johnson big run. It kind of got you back in it. But then you let them go score the very next drive. So you kind of killed that momentum. It just – yeah. I mean, I'll say this. Cole, here's a question for you. Would you say you were more impressed with Miami or more disappointed in Florida or more underwhelmed with Florida?
I think that here's the thing that we have to kind of admit right now. Miami has been the laughingstock of college football because they are truly the Dallas Cowboys, put the wagon before the horse every single year. We think that they're going to turn the corner. We think that this is finally the year everything comes together. We hear about Mario coming on down from Eugene. He wants to be the reason why this program has actually proven to be the former U. We see what they bring in the transfer portal. We see the way they're spending money in NIL. We see the way they're recruiting. We've heard it for years. They bring in a quarterback, and honestly, at this point, it's very hard to say that there are 10 teams better than Miami. The performance they put on today, that's a top 10 team. Top to bottom, offensively, defensively, consistently at wide receiver. The running back room was a probable weak point, but also maybe that's a testament to what you have with Florida's defensive line. The secondary came away with 2 big turnovers. One, of course, against a young freshman that we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the show. But Shannon Dawson was asked to pick his quarterback. He went out and he convinced Cam Ward, don't go to the NFL draft, come back here. If you come down to Coral Gables, this will be the most man-raised situation you have ever had. All you have to do is learn how to play in my style of offense. More importantly, master how to be a facilitator of the ball. We have great success. That's it. I mean, that's it, Dave. That is a top 10 team that we watched today. That is a version of a team that when the butt of the jokes continue to pile up about Miami, you can't make them anymore. And the reason why is because everyone want to point to, well, they're going to lose the game that they shouldn't. This was a game that they shouldn't have lost. And you want to know what? They dominated. They dominated from the second that Cam Ward made that blundering mistake with the interception. It's like he turned a switch. It was a 180 flip. And he said, all right, bet, I'm going to go to work.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a week and probably like a half a game so far. I mean, Cam Ward would he put himself in that Heisman.
That's your Heisman winner today.
Today would be it. You're right. And you talk about the games that they may slip up. I think sometimes we forget the ACC, I think, is not going to be very good this year. You look on the schedule, you're like, oh, Virginia Tech, that could be a game. And maybe it still could. Maybe I'm speaking too early. It still could. I'm not going to totally put it away. But after watching Virginia Tech versus Vanderbilt today, you're a little bit like, yeah, I don't know. I think Miami should be better than everybody in the ACC this year. It's still early, but I'm with you. I would probably say, I mean, look, Florida did not look great, especially in the offensive line.
No.
Spot. But Miami was impressive, and like you said, specifically Cam Ward. They had a big boy response after that game. I love the play call to the boundary, them sealing off the edge, Montrell Johnson scoring. He looked more explosive and had more burst. He wouldn't have finished that run last year. But then the very next drive, to my point, Miami goes and big boys their way down there to a score and just answers on the road. I mean, Cole, you watch a lot of football. Great teams go and do that when they have to answer the bell. It's like, all right, we got hit in the mouth real fast, especially on the road. Let's just go do our business. We went down and scored. They did it with relatively ease. And it was just kind of like, I mean, that was the game there to me. Is it once they went and answered that to go back up 14, it was like, yeah, I don't really see a lot of momentum or Florida consistently putting drives together. I don't know what it is with Florida. Just the defense again, giving up the most points ever scored at home. Is that the stat I saw?
It was the most points ever given up in a home opener in the history of Florida football.
Home opener, that's what I meant. Sorry, you're right. It's a very specific stat. Yeah.
When you look at Miami's final stat line, Cam Ward, 26 of 35, 385 yards, 11 yards per pass attempt. He also ran for an 11 yards per gain, 3 carries, 33 yards. I thought his composure in that backfield was phenomenal. The part that was so impressive about Cam Ward in this game was that it is a new system. It is a new receiving corps. Yeah. Sam Brown comes on.
He had a new center he's never worked with.
Has a brand new center. You hear about Elijah Arroyo, the tight end. He didn't play last year. So This was a guy that was still missing a lot of time. Xavier Restrepo was really the only guy that we knew from last year's team down in the ACC. And you never felt anything. It just seemed like confidence had risen the second he had that turnover. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. I'm going to make sure that I make those minor flaws turn into substantial gains. Everything that you saw from this performance was exactly why Mario Cristobal felt confident about this team. And Dave, I've been on record saying this, and Chris has been on record saying this, but we have to go ahead and admit it right now. All 3 of us were wrong. All 3 of us were 100% wrong. Every single one of us picked Miami to lose in the Swamp. We thought that there was going to be a turning corner. But at the same time, I've been on record multiple appearances on radio shows, on podcasts, on this own channel, saying that this is going to be similar to the Texas Longhorns of 2023. They get the quarterback. They add in the last few pieces. The offensive and defensive line are built. They didn't have Ruben Bain. Ruben Bain left in the opening drive, and they still dominated Graham Mertz. He had no time to throw. And there is that fine line of saying, yes, Miami might be a little overhyped. This is where the punchline culture and also the beer goggles of college football oversaturated takes come in immediately. They might be on a little bit that Miami is going to be able to compete for a national title. We can agree with that. But at the same time, you have to admit that there is so much positivity and so much of a proper direction. You take off that Miami logo and the ACC that's attached to the branding of the Hurricanes. That offensive and defensive line looks like an SEC unit. And if that looks like an SEC unit and you're able to hold your own and you're able to open up creases and give your quarterback time and also have your quarterback maneuver outside the pocket and not be afraid to deliver a clean strike down the field and give his receivers a second opportunity.
Yeah,
that's what it takes to win the SEC.
Yeah, the play's never dead with it. Good or bad, it'll come back to haunt him sometimes when he throws across his body. But at the same time, those are the kind of plays you need in kind of championship seasons. No, I mean, Miami really. I mean, I was more impressed. I'm with you. I think I said it on one show I was on. I thought both Clemson and Miami would lose today and still play for the ACC title. And I feel like
they still could.
Miami now, and like Florida. I mean, like you said, Clemson still could too. But yeah, Miami's definitely the cream of the crop in the ACC after week 1 for sure.
I just want to cut you off fast. I think that a lot of people who will say who didn't see this coming, it's not that we didn't see this coming. It's that we thought maybe we would see a turn of the corner for Billy Napier in this offense. It's year 3. You feel better. It's Graham Mertz. You're bringing the right weapons. You have a guy in Trey Wilson who I think is still a stud and underrated. He had no time. I mean, if you really want to know what the separation in this game was, Cam Ward had a second opportunity on countless occasions. Yeah. Graham Mertz had one throw.
What we heard all fall camp at Florida is that right side, Damian George, who moved inside, who I've stated as like, that's a good move for him. And maybe it ends up being. It's still week 1. Overall, maybe it ends up being better, but you've heard he struggled all offseason, so I don't know where it comes on now. And then the Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon kid, they brought in the San Diego State transfer to start at right tackle. They just weren't getting it done today. And I don't know how much you can really fix that. That's the problem. I mean, that game in 3 weeks? I mean, you're giving them the win against Mississippi State in my scenario here, but that game at home is, let's say they beat Mississippi State, they roll into the A&M game 2-1. They lose to A&M.
And they play A&M before Mississippi State. They're going to have a shot to be 1-1 because they play A&M after Stanford.
All right. So I swapped up those games. Yeah.
So you're talking about going into that.
So it's Stanford, then so yeah, in 2 weeks. That's a must win, dude.
It's becoming it. And honestly, you have no idea what to expect from A&M because we have yet to see them play. But you may have to feel like that this is where you wave the white flag. And Billy Napier, we can go ahead and give him as much credit as possible and say that he has proven if you give him time, he can work. But this is Florida. And I'm going to be completely honest whenever we talk about this, and it's finally time to kind of rip the Band-Aid off. I'm kind of done listening to comments about what we should expect going into this year, what we should actually live up to. Because the reality is that the way that we talk about Colorado, in a sense, where, they found a way to get a win over a really good FCS team. Well, that schedule is really – it's Florida. The expectations of Florida have not changed in the last 50 years. You are supposed to be right alongside Georgia and Alabama and LSU and the top teams in the SEC competing for national titles. You're supposed to be there. Yeah. And even though you feel like that you have brought in the right quarterback, and we do feel very confident, I think, moving forward in what the future of DJ Lagway looks like, even in 2 drives, everyone else is getting better. Tennessee looked miles better today than they did at all last season. And it was Chattanooga. I don't care. You look at LSU and what they bring in the offensive line, their offensive personnel stays the same. And their defense is slightly better. They've been a 10-win team. What are we saying about them if they get a slightly better defense and an undefeated year down in Baton Rouge? Georgia's not going away. Alabama made sure that they at least went idle when it came to finding their next head coach and waiting with Kalen DeBoer. Texas and Oklahoma have joined the mix. Texas won 52-0 over who I believe is going to be the best receiver they face all year in Torrey Horton, and they shut him down. And this is Florida that we're talking about. So if not now, when? Because if expectations are to always be right alongside those contending teams in the conference, and it just feels like we are giving the benefit of the doubt because it's a tough schedule. You want to know what? I'm not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. It's how you look in those games that gives you the identity that you are trending upward. That is the reason why people are pissed off. It's not because you lost the game. You can lose this game, and I think people would understand. It's the fact that you lost the game the way you did.
Yeah, if you were playing match for match with Miami today, because Miami looked good. I think anybody can tell you that. But no, I think the downfall, and I'm not calling for Billy Napier's job yet. It's still, he's got 11 more games.
Sure.
The downfall of Billy Napier will literally be the offensive line evaluations, him and Rob Sell, and then him never hiring an offensive coordinator. Like dude, at some point you got to try. I like your run game. Sometimes it produced 1 touchdown. You run to the boundary. I love that. You're pulling the guard center or guard and tackle. You're getting out there, sealing the edge. I like that. But overall, dude, there's just so many inconsistencies. You've seen it over 3 years. If it doesn't shake out and they lose to A&M and it kind of starts hitting, people start checking out middle of the year. Because like you said, I mean, November is going to be rough with the schedule, but it's going to be because he didn't hire a coordinator and because their evaluations, him and Rob Sell up front on the offensive line. We talk about that. The defense, though. I mean, they had Ron Roberts. They got put up 41. But I think you may agree with this, too. As we look down the line, that may not – look, I mean, 41 points is a lot. We know that. But we see that a lot more often now in today's college football. We may be looking down the season and be like, well, Miami's pretty good on offense.
I think 2 things can be true. I think that number one, Miami might end up being a top 10 offense in every single metric this year because of who they have at quarterback. And number 2, Miami's offense is just better than what you're going to see in most SEC teams. And Florida played up to a certain standard. You got to give a little bit of credit to Florida. The run game of Miami was their weak point in this matchup. It was. They averaged 4.4 yards per play, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. One was both inside the red zone. But they were set up on play action passes that were deep shots down the field. I mean, Cam Ward had more yards through the air on deep passes than Graham Mertz had all day. At some point, and there were just some plays, like when you look at that one pass down the sideline that went to, who was it? Isaiah Horton. That one.
Yeah.
24-yard gain. That's just proper location. Like, it was great coverage by Florida, but it was just better overall fanatics by Horton and size 1. He put it only where a guy who is 6'4" could get it. Yeah. That was it. And that's what you get in a veteran quarterback that's been playing in multiple systems for 6 years in college. That's really where I feel like that you get a separation between these.
Now it kind of it's tough to say where does Florida go from here because obviously, I mean, you think they're going to pick the Samford win up next week, you hope. And then we haven't seen A&M play yet. So it's kind of like, well, what are we going to see with them? If they come out and look good and beat Notre Dame, you're like, all right, like maybe their first road game. I mean, it's going to be a must win. I mean, what time did they announce the time to that game yet? They got it.
No, it's at 2:30, I think.
Is it? Let me see. Florida football schedule.
A&M, I think, is.
I mean, how fired up are the fans going to be walking into that one?
I think we have to be, just because if you have no idea what you're going to see.
You're right. It's 3:30.
You have no idea what you're going to see in this game, and I think that's kind of a blessing.
All right, hey, Cole, here you go. Here's a scenario. Not calling for his job here, but you lost to Miami. You beat Stanford. Let's say you lose to A&M. You don't look great against Mississippi State, but you win. If you lose to UCF at home,
that's the game.
Yep.
That's the game. Because of UCF, Miami is a team to where many people are going to say at the end of the year, this is what we expected. It was year 3. They brought in the quarterback.
And we both think Miami's going to be good. Yeah.
I mean, like everyone's getting the butt of jokes because they put Miami in the playoff. And it's like, that performance today is why we did it. Like, it's not because of we just want to be funny and say, oh, we're overhyping Miami. No, that's the reason why Miami is going to be in the playoff. But
right.
UCF is not. UCF may be an 8-win team this year. They feel like that they probably have turned a little bit of a corner underneath Gus Malzahn. It certainly feels like that he's got his quarterback in KJ Jefferson, which is the closest thing he's had since Cam Newton. But that's an 8-win team. There are still holes, I think, in the Knights roster to where Florida can easily take advantage of it. So I think that's a must-win game. That is the game that I have circled where if you are Scott Strickland, you already have your answer. And the crazy part is, this might be a scenario where it's out of Billy's hands. Because if Scott Strickland is shown the door, a new AD is going to come on in and he's going to make his own decisions. That's
and there's a good chance, Scott Strickland doesn't get a third time.
He's not
football hire. Now I saw somebody posted, what was Billy Napier? What was this? Let's see. I saw someone posted some. And again, you aren't trying to talk about Billy Napier's. Yeah, Billy Napier's buyout is 80% of his remaining contract. He's owed $26 million plus. So I mean, again, it's too early to talk about that. This specific game, it's like you said, if you're a Florida fan, if I'm putting myself in their shoes and I went to that and I'm thinking, man, we can have a real difference in willing our team to a victory. And that's what, I mean, it looks like I think what would piss me off is, all right, dude, like you had a chance to go hire an offensive coordinator. You're right. Nope. I think we're better when I do it. It's like we go out there and do that. And I get it. So the players got to execute, but at the same time, like, dude, it's year 3. You've been in charge of that offensive line as well. Your right-hand guy, your assistant head coach, Rob Sell, has been with you since y'all were in Alabama together in Louisiana. Like, he's your dude you trust on offensive line evaluations. That's on both of y'all, man. Like, at some point, you're right. Like, getting embarrassed at home like that is just that is where I'm with you, Cole. You can handle a loss, especially against a good Miami team. But, dude, it was over after they answered that Montrell Johnson score in the second quarter.
I don't know if it was over, but it certainly felt like momentum had been sucked out, especially how quickly they scored right after that play. I thought another major
then Miami got the ball to open up the second half. It was like, oh, yeah.
I thought another major point. You have Eugene Wilson. I thought he was going to be the X factor in this game. I thought if there were 2 names that you had to watch, it was number 1 for Miami, and it was absolutely.
Hey, your boy led Florida in receptions.
59 yards. They shut him down. Like, yeah, you have 5 catches. I mean, you have 7 catches. That's great. But most of them either came because of you created opportunities in the open space. He had 2 first downs. I mean, his ability to be a Kirkland brand Percy Harvin was all I've been talking about for weeks on this channel. How I think that he can turn the corner and actually be that difference maker that creates opportunities. And you saw it. You saw how he can. But Graham Mertz had no time. And for Graham Mertz now, the big question is that what is the severity of the injury? I thought it was the right move to make sure that you turn to DJ Lagway because you have to.
Why not?
You have to turn to him because it's more importantly, you had to throw your curveball. You had to get something on with the offense. Sometimes you have to go to the reliever, even if your pitcher has a one-hitter. Yeah. Sometimes you got to go to the bullpen just to save face and walk away feeling confident. It's a solo home run, but maybe your bullpen can strike out instead of letting guys on base. That's what it is with DJ Lagway. And Lagway, he showed enough. He showed enough to where there was life in the offense for a moment. You saw the crowd for the first time really since the Montrell Johnson touchdown get back into the game. There was a little bit more positivity. The thing is, and this is something that we have to go ahead and hold our hats on. If DJ Lagway is anything like Arch Manning, where he's not committed to the program, he's committed to the people, you have to do one of two things. Number one, you have to give him an NIL deal that keeps him around, regardless of the situation that goes on behind closed doors with the front office personnel. Or number two, you have to keep Billy Napier, because this is the most important prospect that has ever walked through that building since the days of Tim Tebow. And the fact of the matter is that you saw he's only going to get better. You can see a future. You can see a promising one. And you have to convince him, listen, we know that Billy's your guy, but what if we get you Lane Kiffin? What if we get you Jed Fish? What if we get you one of these names that comes out over? What if like a G.J. Kinney, who is supposed to be the finite savior of Texas State? And again, Sunbelt, I know it's a little hard, tight conversation right now for a lot of people in Gainesville, but what if one of those guys is able to sell DJ Lagway in the future? That's priority number one, because of what you saw, even in that glimpse, was enough to give you hope that there is something there. But how much longer can you hold out hope and just say, Billy's going to figure it out? Yeah. Well, Billy should have figured it out today. And the problem is that it's not a loss. It's the way you lose games. And ultimately, that is what people remember. Sometimes they will remember the score. Sometimes they'll remember the stat line. Most of the times they'll remember the performance. And the performance as a whole, when you look at it from the game planning perspective, it's a C- at best for Billy.
Yeah. It's kind of an opposite game from them from last year. They had so many penalties and turnovers last year. I think they had 2 penalties and 2 turnovers in total this year. And it's like, yeah, Miami was just that much better than you. Like that's kind of it looked like Billy was coaching his first game at Florida. And I think people be like, it kind of felt like, it wasn't as bad, but like you didn't judge Dan Lanning that hard when they got beat down by Georgia in his first game. It was bad, but it was kind of that felt like a first game in someone's first in his first tenure. It felt like somebody's first game at Florida for the first year. That really would. I thought that's a good. Give myself a tip of the cap there. I felt like it was a good analogy there.
It's not a bad one. The problem is that you think about it for a second. Dan Lanning turned a corner immediately after that first game.
Oh yeah, I'm not comparing.
He turned the corner. You're still seeing similar mistakes, and honestly, it's not even mistakes because for the most part, it was a clean game from Florida. There wasn't that many penalties.
I just looked it up. There's 2 penalties. That's what I thought. I was like, I don't remember that.
There wasn't many penalties.
There's only 3 penalties in the whole game.
And the crazy part is that they were in great situations lined up. They didn't find themselves caught offsides. They actually added in pressure. They simply just didn't have the guys that Miami did. And at the end of the day, this is Florida, and this is the SEC. Yeah. And much as we talk about with Dabo Swinney coming on over to Clemson, that you don't want to embrace the transfer portal, Billy did. And there were some guys that stood up. Shamir Diga had a few plays. Elijah Badger had a few plays. Pop Johnson had a few plays. Like there were some good moments from the transfers.
No, I'm not saying they can't go win. I don't think you are either. They have to win that A&M game from just any kind of momentum standpoint. They have to. I don't really care what A&M does tonight. Like it's at home. They need to win. They need to win that game, man. It's just an ugly game across the board. I shouldn't say ugly because there really weren't many penalties, but it just. Man, it's kind of sad that Miami was that much better than you in your year 3.
Listen, slow and steady sometimes wins the race. And for slow and steady in Coral Gables, right now, Mario has just kind of hit that soup drive. He is torqued up. He's hit the nitrous, and now he is flying up the record charts. People are buying stock in the Hurricanes going into year 3. And Billy, it's about as low as possible at this point. The bottom line is that, yes, Florida has, I think, some pieces there to where you feel more confident about what direction this offense can be. But you look at the way that these two teams have been built over the last 2 years leading up to what is supposed to be a critical decision in year 3. And one team actually looks the part of what we envisioned when he was hired, and the other one still is probably at step number 3 when you're supposed to be at step number 12.
Yep, I agree.
That does it for us here on the SEC Postgame Show. We will be back after Texas A&M takes on Notre Dame live in College Station. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Make sure that you download the podcast version of the show, wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the social channels. We'll be live every single day, and we're going to be everywhere: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave on Twitter, at Mock10 Sports. Follow me on Twitter, at Mr. Cole Thompson. Live reaction coming up from College Station following the final countdown. But for this one, Miami looks like a playoff team, and Sunbelt Billy jokes are not going to be dying.
They got a 2-week season. Got to get it going.
They have a 2-week season, and he literally might have a 2-week notice. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. We'll be back here later tonight. Peace.